Welcome to Self-Care for the Soul podcast. I'm excited to have with me today guests Andi Buerger and Teresa Velardi. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to be here.
Excited to have you. I'm going to take a minute and read your bio. Andi Buerger is an international speaker, author, and advocate for victims of human trafficking and exploitation. Andi herself was a victim of child sex trafficking and unspeakable abuses by family members for 17 years. Andi founded Beulah's Place, which provided temporary shelter services to at-risk, unsheltered teens for 14 years. 300 plus youth were successfully rescued and assisted, earning national recognition. Andi later founded Voices Against Trafficking to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves, the voiceless victims of human trafficking and exploitation. VAT, Voices Against Trafficking, advocates for the protection of every human's rights, regardless of race, gender, culture, or socioeconomic status. Voices Against Trafficking, the strength of many voices speaking as one, gives a portion of proceeds from each sale to survivors of child abuse and trafficking, as does Andi's first book, A Fragile Thread of Hope, One Survivor's Quest to Rescue. Andi launched Voices of Courage magazine in 2023. It is distributed internationally and accepted into the U.S. Library of Congress. It honors everyday heroes who selflessly fight to protect human rights. These champions come from all walks of life to change communities and the world for the better. A television series by the same title debuts in 2025. Andi, welcome. Thank you so much. I'm just amazed with all that you do.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here, Deborah.
It's an honor to have you. I'm going to read Teresa's bio as well. And welcome her, of course. Welcome, Teresa. Teresa Velardi is the CEO and founder of Authentic Endeavors Publishing, a hybrid publishing company she launched in 2010. With more than 14 years of experience and hundreds of books published, Teresa is an editor, author, speaker, and passionate advocate for storytelling. She is especially devoted to Christian and children's books that inspire faith, hope, and purpose across generations. Teresa is the creator of the Daily Gift book series, a collaborative collection designed to encourage gratitude, peace, friendship, inspiration, and joy through everyday stories. A potter at heart, she believes storytelling, like shaping clay, is a process requiring intention, patience, and trust, and she guides authors through that journey with care and encouragement. Authentic Endeavors Publishing began with multi-author short story compilations and evolved to support individual writers pursuing their dream of publication. Teresa is also host of the podcast Conversations That Make a Difference, where she amplifies voices that uplift, inspire, and create meaningful impact. Teresa has been on my show before, and I've been on hers, and Teresa actually introduced me to Andi. She did an episode with Andi and some of her supporters or collaborators for Voices Against Trafficking. Yes. Okay. And you all have a project that you've done together called DJs Against Trafficking.
Yes.
And yes. So, well, let me welcome you, Teresa. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Deborah. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
It is always a pleasure to be with you as well. And I'm very excited for this, for where this conversation might go today. Let me just start with you, Andi, because I noticed as I was looking through your information, I was noticing that I had a set image, if you will, a picture in my head, or thought, a definition that I had put onto trafficking, on what it was. And as I was looking through your site and reading your information, I watched some of your other interviews as well, I recognized that too is trafficking. oh, that too is trafficking. I had different names that I had associated with different things, but I had a very narrow view of what trafficking is. So can you help us to understand what trafficking is and what forms it takes?
Absolutely. And it's a common issue that I find, whether it's the US or abroad, because there are so many different versions or visions of what it could look like, what's in our imagination and what's real, what's in the movies, what we know. So the base definition, Andy's definition, is basically based on human trafficking. It's the act of coercing or forcing somebody into something they do not want to do, such as sexual activity, sex for money, okay, as known as the sex trade. Labor trafficking. It's not just sweatshops in some foreign country. It's using people to do labor and treating them horribly and not paying them, or paying them 50 cents a day type of thing. So they are chained basically to the people that do that. And then another one, a third one that we don't think about a lot so much in the US, but debt repayment. So for example, let's say a mom and dad in Mexico really want a better life for their son or daughter, and a cousin or somebody says, oh, hey, I'll take them over, the border. We'll get them in there. They'll get to have this great life and everything. But lots of things happen before they get to the border. But even if they get through the border into the U.S., it doesn't usually work out that way. They don't get to go to school and have good clothes and whatnot. They're usually sold or trafficked for money. And of course, the parents had good intentions, but a lot of times the coyotes, as we call them, they'll want money, and they'll say, well, you didn't pay us enough, so we need more money. Or if you want to see your children again, they'll threaten the family. And yes, there are families all over the world that oftentimes do sell their children for whatever reason. They need money, they can't feed them, whatever it is, and some just don't care. That's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So, along those lines, would you be willing to share a little bit about your story?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that is important in my life is for people to be able to understand from someone who's been there. And I was trafficked from the ages of 6 months to 17 years old by male and female immediate family members, as well as a few extended family members. Now, in the early 60s, they didn't even have a term for it. Okay, the term is new, but the activity is not new. It's pretty much been around since just after Cain and Abel. So, Romans, Greeks, all kinds of cultures traded human beings for either sexual activities, labor, or debt repayment, things like that. But in my case, my birth mother was the orchestrator of all evil. And by the time I was 5 years old, Deborah, the torture, the physical beatdowns, the mental, everything that was going on. I was a small child, even for 5, and there was no way out, no one to run to, nowhere to go, and nobody heard the screams. Again, in those days, people didn't even talk about child abuse.
Right.
So I figured if I was dead, then I would be free. And so my thought was, just jump in front of a car, and then they can't touch you, they can't hurt you, they can't do all these awful things or take you anywhere where those things can happen, and I would be at peace. So I trotted down to the curb of my house one day, and I waited for a car to be coming by fast enough to jump in front of. And no car came by. I looked up into this huge sky. It was so blue. I lived in Southern California, so it was just like this huge blue sky. And I thought, I wonder how far it goes. How big is the sky? I had never been anywhere else except LA. So I just had these questions. And then in my heart, I heard this voice, which was just very resonant, very gentle, say, this is not the plan I have for you. And suicide is not the answer. And so in my life, that was God speaking into my heart. And for other people, it might be something else. But I listened and I trusted, which is one of the miracles, to be honest, because I had no reason to trust someone I couldn't see. I couldn't trust the people I could see. But I did. And I said, if you keep me alive, I'll do whatever you call me to do. Now, that didn't mean everything was easy or changed. It just meant that there was someone out there that knew why I was on that curb that day, Deborah. And that was enough for me. And there were a couple more attempts before I was 10 because things were that bad. I'd been locked up. My birth brother tried to smother me to death. My mother tried to kill me. I was just all these different things. And at 17, it was the last time she tried to choke me to death. And finally, I had nowhere to go. You know, there wasn't social services in the way that we have it now. There weren't hotlines. The nearest police department was 2 miles away, and I was in not a very good neighborhood at that time. And so trying to think about walking, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And they would have sent me back because I was a minor. I was still 17. So by the time I got into college and realized people lived a different way, it was a whole new world, and I was terrified most of the time. But I learned to figure out how to survive. And if I worked harder and faster than anybody else, then I might be able to make it in this life and be successful. And so I finished early. I finished in 3 years and then went to law school.
Wow. Well, on so many levels, because, you know, when you talk about being a 5-year-old and recognizing that you want out and even contemplating that you have a choice of suicide. Children, when bad things happen to children, a lot of times they don't even imagine that there's another way because that's all they've known. But something in you had enough, I guess, a broad scope of what hope might be, even though, you know, it looked like you were trying to take the out of suicide. There's still, to me, that says here's someone who had something inside of her that knew enough to say this isn't right, and there's got to be a way out. There's got to be something better, that this isn't what life has to be. And as you speak, what comes to me from my perspective, from my perception, be it what it may, is just this, a voice of hope and a voice of perhaps divine inspiration that's living through you, speaking through you, that is here for a divine purpose. And that really touches a deep place. And so thank you for being that and for answering that call and for saying yes to that.
Well, God's voice became my voice, and then my voice spoke to other voices, and that's why collectively we are more powerful than, you know, just a single person in one place at one time. And that has, you're right, being a voice of hope, being a voice for the voiceless. If we can be their voices, then eventually we are going to win. And we are going to push back the predators, push back those who hurt children who are God's innocents. And as Teresa always says, God's children are not for sale, and they're not. You know, that's absolutely not the purpose of children. They're our future of any country, any village, any town. And yet we have gotten so far down the rabbit hole of not valuing human life, especially a child's, that we have allowed this epidemic of this human epidemic to run amok. But there is hope, because if God can do that for me, he can do it for anyone. And it's not easy, but it can be done.
So, I mean, why do you think that happens? That this is so pervasive, and that, you know, that it continues? Why does it continue? Why haven't we been able to just stand up and say, stop?
Well, one thing, we forgot how to stand up for ourselves and for people that we love and the innocent. But pulling it back even further, take a business principle, supply and demand. If there was no demand for little children or organ harvesting or any of these ugly, evil, horrific things that we have in our society globally, then there would be no need to provide it, because if you can't make money off of it, why get in that business, right? So a lot of it is demand. The U.S. is a huge demand for a lot of these things. Genocide, all those things are part of human trafficking. It's all under that umbrella, because taking people forcibly. But back to the pervasiveness. Well, we have the internet. Okay, internet started out as a great idea, and it probably was, and it does have its good points. But then guess what? Somebody figured out how to either get greedy or how to use it for illegal gains, because you can do good, you can do evil, you can do nothing. And two of those are bad, because not doing anything, sitting on a fence as a national or a global community is just as bad as doing the act themselves, in my opinion, because there were people who knew something was wrong in my life, but never stood up, never talked about it till decades later. Well, we didn't want to get anybody in trouble. We didn't want to, They were not voices of courage like the three of us here are right now. And so, but then also, we have to teach people how to speak up and feel good about it, feel safe about, hey, I think I saw something, what do I do? And that's why we provide the tools. But the pervasiveness, the other part of human trafficking is we hear all about the money and greed, and that's valid. But it's also depravity. There are some people that are just out and out depraved, like my birth mother, and everyone else involved. So we're not going to get rid of human depravity because, we're flawed innately, but we can at least put a dent in the commercial side of it.
And the commercial side of it, can you explain a little bit more about?
Sure. Take, for example, right now, one of the most dangerous places for a female 18 to 24 years old is a college campus. Okay. So, the trafficking ringleaders, the people that run a lot of agents, a lot of predators, and they have all of this. It's like prostitution rings, okay? But the traffickers actually recruit people on campus. A young man maybe, finds that girl that's a little shy, or maybe doesn't have a boyfriend, or whatever, is desperate for attention kind of thing, and vice versa. There are female gang members, female traffickers that will do the same thing. There are guy-gal combos that will hold a party, right, and invite college kids, and they'll just figure out how to lure them into another room or another place, put them in a van, and take them away. Like, oh, hey, here's a private room for you guys. Okay, come over here. So a lot of different things, not just, putting a Mickey in somebody's drink, but that can't be the start of it. But right now, the predators are so organized, let's put it that way. They are very organized, like any other multinational business, okay? They're a transnational criminal enterprise, okay? But they know how to use the internet. There are up to 1 million predators a day on the internet looking for your niece, your nephew, your child, your sister. So we have to be more diligent about watching and asking questions in an appropriate way, not saying, what are you looking at? But hey, I'm interested in what you're interested in. What are you looking at? Or, hey, what's that about? Or, that game looks a little different than what we thought it was. What do you think? Right? And have conversations with our children, age appropriate ones. And if you're not sure, then get people like us, anyone that has had any kind of training, or just somebody that, has some education, or they have our book and they can answer some questions, or the hotlines and helplines that we have in our book, on our website. Call someone safely in a neutral way, and they will help you in your own area, in the U.S. anyway, to get help if you're not sure. I always tell people, go to your local law authority, ask them, what do you do about human trafficking in my area? And if they say, well, we don't have any, well, let me give you a couple statistics. Right now in the U.S., every 40 seconds or less, there is a child 18 or under that is abducted or lured into something safe. And they will be in a trafficking ring within 48 hours if they're not found.
Wow.
Minimum. The other part of it is that child abuse, which we lose 5+ kids a day, 80% of which are under the age of 5 in the U.S. So those children died just from abuse. The ones that survive abuse, I was lucky in a lot of ways. I did not end up in I didn't end up in a non-familial trafficking ring because it was still, like I said, early 60s. But nowadays, someone who's been abused, violated, and no one stepped in, they're going to be more vulnerable to someone being nice to them. Hey, why don't we have lunch? Or, hey, I want to be your friend. Or, hey, I have some other friends that are coming over tonight. Would you like to meet them since your parents aren't home or you don't have any supervision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very simple, very subtle how they get to our kids. And that's what our packet helps. It helps them have a conversation. Teresa's got a great story about someone that it impacted. So our prevention packet is essential. The tips on how to keep kids safe, how to prevent child abuse, simple things you can do that don't cost any money, but they may cost you a few minutes of your time. But isn't that the best insurance policy for your kids or the kids that you're in charge of, even if you don't have your own kids?
Yeah, beautiful. And that's what I was going to ask you is like, what is needed? What is needed to be able to have these conversations? I love that you gave that example because I know like when a child has been abused or threatened or in some way, there's so much shame, there's so much fear, there's so much everything else that if you go at them with like that suspicious attacking, you've done something wrong voice, they're just going to retreat further away. It's really hard as it is to be able to come and say, wait, this is a bad thing that's happened, without feeling like I've done something bad. It is my fault. So to give people those ways to actually speak to their children in a non-threatening, non-accusatory way is really important. And Teresa, you have some resources there to share. Would you like to talk about those?
Yeah, and these are available on the Voices Against Trafficking website. One of them is tips and solutions to prevent child abuse. And it's, a lot of this is about being informed. And that's what it says right here. Be informed, like know what's going on around you, know what resources are available to you. And there's resources on the Voices Against Trafficking helplines and hotlines. And this is free. You can get this. But one of the things you were talking about specifically, and our person who put together the Voices Against Trafficking, DJs Against Trafficking marathon that we recently did, and we'll do again in July 30th to 31st are the dates. So, and it's in conjunction with the Soul 105.3. And the person who is my producer and who has grandchildren was very enlightened, just as you're learning about, we're learning more and more. Every time I talk to Andi, I learn more and more. But there's a process called grooming. And this is a piece of information that each parent should actually really read this and talk to their children about who they are having conversations with on the gaming apps, who they are having conversations with in chat rooms, that sort of stuff. Because as Andi said, 1 million people are out there trying to lure in somebody for their gain and the child's loss. So there's a lot of information, typical stages of grooming, just to give you some information, targeting. They identify children who are vulnerable. We talked about that. And they try and gain the trust. They gain the trust. They're meeting a need. The trafficker uses information that gathers to offer the child something they need, whether it's money, a place to stay, and that sort of thing. And Andi touched on this. Isolation, exploitation, maintaining control. There's all kinds of things that are in this one particular document that every parent can use to help keep their children safe.
That is so important in the internet world and the world of gaming. Boy. So I'm reliving all of the issues with my great nieces and great nephews with they're constantly on the gaming apps and, they don't want to be told that they can't do it. They will just really fight you on it if you try to monitor what they're doing at all.
That's why the conversations are so important. Like, hey, let's have taco night or pizza or whatever. I want to talk to y'all about something. And, there's no judgment here. So if you have questions, ask mom, ask auntie, ask whoever, who has the information. I want to talk about these things because I want you to be safe. I'm not trying to police you. I'm trying to protect you. And as a family, there are things we can do to help each other. And wouldn't that be a great idea if we knew how to protect each other, right? And you have to include them in the process of decision making, whether they're 5 or they're 15 or they're 20, at college, because it goes beyond stranger danger. They have no idea how slick these predators are, because the average predator, yes, they can be Eastern European, they can be, different cultures, but the average predator in the U.S. looks like your dentist or your librarian or, the coach or whoever. And so as adults, whether we're parents, foster parents, godparents, grandparents, daycare workers, if we are in charge of children, we must do more, because it is that bad. And we gave up our rights, so to speak, when we said, well, the school will take care of them, or the church will take care of it, or the daycare this, or the sports people, they've got my kid, they're safe, right? And that is very dangerous thinking, because how many college examples do we have where things went terribly wrong because of either coaching or people who knew and never spoke up? And so we have lots of examples, celebrities, non-celebrities, but we need to learn our lesson and say, you know what, it's worth 5 minutes of my time to sit my kids down, my adult kids, whatever, and say, look, I just want to bring this up because it's important for you to know. And if ever anything happens, here's our family code word, which is one of the things on that packet. If I see that word, I'm going to, blaze out of here, and I'm going to come help you, find you, whatever it takes. Okay. But you can't give that word to everybody. And for the older kids, they should have a secondary word, because a lot of times something goes wrong with a 15-year-old or 16-year-old, they're going to tell a peer before they tell an adult, because they don't want to be yelled at. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to feel ashamed. And I tell every person I talk to, if you've never made a bad judgment in your entire life, great, good for you. You're probably the only one, because we have little people and mid-sized people and growing into older people who are going to make poor judgments, not because they want to be bad or rebellious. A few do, very few, but because they're human and they're not completely evolved yet. And so the predators are a lot smarter than most adults at this point. So we need to jump in and say, hey, let's just have a conversation. I heard someone speak, and this is what we need to do.
Yeah, they're experts at their game. Oh, yeah. So all the more reason to study what's happening and to I remember in 2012, I moved from Maryland to Florida, and I had worked for years in wellness centers and in like medical spas, health spas, and those kind of things, as a massage therapist and a colon hydrotherapist and nutrition and cleansing and all of that. And when I moved to Florida, I was lived about 45 minutes north of West Palm. And Florida was the first place where, in order to get a massage therapy license, and they had, it was a recent law, you had to be completely fingerprinted and have a file with the FBI because of the trafficking that was going on there. And they said, they had a statewide massage therapy association, and the police went to the different meetings. There were mandatory meetings where we got to learn about the trafficking that was happening there. And they said there, I recognize it now. I was just north of, Epstein and what was going on there. But they did spell it out, what was happening. And they said that the trafficking was, they said, you have no idea how far up this goes, and it runs between Florida and New York. And, they basically spelled out all the things that are really in our faces right now in the news. And, so at the time actually appreciated that they were taking those steps to, and I'm like, I have no problem giving my information and my fingerprints and having a file, especially if it would protect me. But I think of like the people. I've worked with women who have experienced childhood abuse and have experienced, and even adult, rapes and as young adults and not specifically trafficking, but with sexual trauma, sexual abuse. And the majority of people will tell you that they tried to say something in whatever words they could eke out and were told, no, that's not true. No, that's not happening. No, that's your imagination. It's in your head. That didn't really happen. That person wouldn't do that. And so they went into silence and never spoke again. And I feel like that is another place that we really need to, and part of what you're doing is to specifically educate people, not just to speak to the children, but also to listen to the children.
Absolutely. That is one of the biggest areas, even still in the courts today. We need to listen better and trust and verify the information. Let's say a child 18 years or under comes to you and mentions something. Okay, well, let's trust that. Let's get some more information. Let's verify that. And in truth, only about 17% of all law enforcement in the U.S. are trained. Okay, mm-hmm. That is not a big number. Mm-hmm. So we need to do more about that. But you're right, listening to people. Look at the Olympian, the girl that was hurt with all the other girls, and the FBI listened to her and then all of a sudden turned on her. Okay. And so we have got to take this more seriously. It infiltrates every level, every culture, every socioeconomic, every religion, everything, because human trafficking is not about right versus left. It's about right versus wrong. It's not about whether you're Catholic, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, any of that. It's about the human being. A human being is being taken, sold, coerced into things they would never have chosen to do or didn't think that was what they were going to have to do. Mm-hmm. Just like take the example of gangs. It's easier to sell a human being than it is drugs because there are a lot of steps to, first of all, making a drug. All the ingredients, putting it together. Then you have to package it. Then you have to distribute it. Then you have to find people that will do that for you. And then you have to money manage. But with a human being, a gang member, let's say, can have a party, invite his girlfriend over. Hey, we're going to have some fun. You want to come? And then, there are 20 of his friends there waiting to have sex with her for money. And do you think that girl's going to go home the next day and say, hey, guess what happened to me last night? Mm-hmm. No. The shame, the humiliation for decades until I had counseling and therapy, I thought there was something wrong with me, or I was too stupid, or I was this, or I was that because I was ugly. Whatever it was, I thought it was me that was the problem because I was told that so many times. And why would anyone do that to me when they're supposed to be parents, right? Mm-hmm. They're supposed to protect you, love you, all that stuff. And so it took a lot of counseling and a lot of work to get to the end of that tunnel where I could see myself as, it wasn't me. I was the problem. Yeah. But how many victims get that? One sexual assault as a child can literally create up to one or more of 73 different diseases and ailments over their lifetime. But how many doctors are trained in understanding that? How many, anybody, teachers, anyone. So we have to really make sure we're doing the background checks. We're doing the training. We're getting as many resources, which is why we put out this third book from Voices Against Trafficking called Voices Against Trafficking. Courage is contagious, because if you stand up and I stand up and Teresa stands up, which she does, we can make a difference in the situation. Ending Human Slavery. And that book has 19 chapters, all different kinds of information, so people can pick it up, read a chapter, think about it, or, read a few chapters. It just depends. There's one about PTSD. There's one about an actual, I saw something and said something from one of our members at an airport and Preventable. Wow. probably prevented that toddler from being sold that day. And
Wow.
so wouldn't you like to read that chapter so you could say, hey, oh gosh, I travel. Maybe, I'll learn something from that, and then share it with somebody.
Yeah.
So, and, coming up in January 22nd, we're going to have a great opportunity for the ebook readers. We're going to offer our ebook for less than $1 because we believe everyone on that day, because January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month in the U.S. There's an International Awareness Month in July for our other event that we're having, but we want everyone to have a chance to get the info. So our desire between the books, the magazines, the music CD we put out, all of these things are so that you, the audience, the listeners, the viewers, can learn about human trafficking without being terrified. I speak to people so that they can know the truth, but also the hope of it without scaring them to death. Because when you're scared, you're not going to listen. You're not going to hear anything. You're not going to learn anything.
Right.
So,
And I mean, yeah. I mean, there really is I think a fear of making a mistake. I mean, how do you, when you're suspicious of something, but you don't know for sure, and then I can, hear all the voices in the head saying, oh, that you're going to cause a scene and you're going to look like a fool because, that's all in your head. Those kind of things. So, I really appreciate the resources that you have. I know you have a lot for families. You have resources for victims, and you also have a way for people to join you in some of the things. Do you guys want to say anything about anything more about the DJs Against Trafficking? I know that's something you've worked on together.
Yeah. Teresa, you go ahead. Tell them how fabulous it was. And
it was so good. It was. And
you're doing another one. So yes.
Yeah, we're doing another one. And we started off with a 2-hour panel, and we had Andi, myself, we had Eric, Karen was there. Now, Eric worked and it was a government worker, and he had a lot of hands-on experience with this particular topic. And he will tell you that you asked, why does this go on? Why does this go on? It's over 150, ready for this, billion with a B, dollar per year industry. And some statistics say it's much higher than that. And it's not just in the United States, it's all over the world. And so we brought a lot of information in that panel, that 2-hour panel. And the station that we were on, the Soul 105.3, they had gotten a tremendous amount of feedback about how awesome the conversations that we were having with the people who were there. BQ was there. BQ is one of the partners in Voices Against Trafficking, and she had a lot of information, and we had people throughout the day who came on. There would be a set of DJs from around the world, started in Thailand, went through Europe, into Argentina and the States, and I think we were on 4 continents that day. And every hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, whatever it was, we would come together again with somebody else talking about, awareness. Mostly it was bringing a lot of information about awareness, the grooming situation. We talked a lot about resources that are out there and how to spot things. And we also talked about a movie that might help some people called Sound of Freedom. And it was put out, Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ, played the main character. And there was a lot of information. It was very tastefully done. There was not anything that would be, I would say, detrimental to a family viewing the movie. It just brought a lot of awareness, I believe. And one of the things, God's children are not for sale. That quote came from that movie. And I just totally believe that if people are educated if people are trained to see certain things, if people can go ahead and educate their children and give them ways to, say no to the party that's going on down the street, that there are people that they don't know, or staying over somebody's house who the parents don't know. A lot of times it's like, it's a free for all. People, oh, friend in school. Okay, no problem. Go ahead. Well, sure. Back in the 50s and 60s, that may have been appropriate because mom and dad were home, but that's not the case anymore. So usually not the case anymore. I'm sure that there are some families who still are, aware of what's going on in their children's lives, but for the most part, they go off to school and you don't know what's going on for the next 8 hours of the day. You have no idea.
I think that was true in the 50s and 60s too. Well, I wasn't around in the 50s, but I was in the 60s. So,
yeah, but even like in Andy's situation with a familial situation, family members, you never know. You never know.
I mean, when it comes to not necessarily the trafficking for money, but just the in-home abuse. I know for myself that happened going to stay at a friend's house with the older sister's boyfriend and, with the cousin over here and those kind of things. And you just never know, where those things are going to happen, even with the parents there, and
exactly. And what about the siblings of the friend that you're going to stay overnight with? Okay.
Yeah.
What about the brothers or the sisters or what about their friends that are, oh, you have a little sister? Okay. And it all seems like fun and games, but I cannot tell you how many friends, how many people have said, yeah, my brothers did this or this happened or whatever. There were 8 of us and nobody cared. And we tried to tell, and then everyone turned against the person who was trying to tell. Right. And so we have got to,
I hear that a lot with the people that I work with. I mean, that's the common story.
And it's get over yourselves because this is real. This is tragic. The victim lives with that event, with that residual, no matter how much counseling, how healed they are, how much, they grow. Like I have an amazing life. Okay. After 6+ decades, but it was creating a new normal. It was learning to love myself. It was my faith. It was a lot of trial and error with all kinds of things in life. It was hard, but you do it because you believe that there's a purpose, that there's a reason for that. But again, we need to give people that opportunity to speak. We need to include them in our churches, in our social groups, in whatever. And if they don't feel like telling you every little gritty detail, don't push them. Let them just share what they feel comfortable. Just be there for them. More ears and less mouth.
Right.
More listening, less speaking. But giving people opportunity, because my last predator died just a year ago. Okay, just a year ago. And that was after another attempt by another familial predator, friends of that predator. After 40 years, they found me. And so it is never over until they're in the ground or they are truly locked up for life in an isolation cell. And there are a lot of people that say, oh, it's so inhumane. And I say, really? Ask the victim how they feel about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the PTSD that they go through. Yes. The trauma that this creates in the life of the victim is just, I have a family member who came to me about something that had happened with somebody else in the family. And I had no clue. And she felt, safe enough to tell me about it. So, people ask, why are you involved in this? Well, that's just one reason why I'm involved in it, because nobody is safe. Nobody is safe from this. And I don't want that to sound gloom and doom, but just because you look a certain way doesn't mean that it's not going to happen to you. Just because, or it's prevalent and we are as parents, as aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, whatever, as a human being, I believe we are all connected and that we are all in one way or another responsible for each other. Not that we have to take on other people's stuff, so to speak, but we are responsible. If you know something, say something. If you can make a difference, make a difference. If something that you say causes somebody else to think about a situation that they might have seen, you've done something good for somebody else. You've made a difference. conversations that make a difference is just that, having a conversation that makes a difference in somebody else's life, regardless of what the topic is. This topic is top of the list. So, yeah.
Absolutely, Teresa. And as you say that, it's like, what if you had said, okay, I'm not going to get involved in this. And that person confided in you and trusted you. And then once again, got left hanging,
So literally could have been left hanging. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, there are horror stories out there, and the imagination could run wild on what those horror stories might be, and you wouldn't be wrong. It's horrible to say, but you wouldn't be wrong.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, it's the simple things. We have to be more observant, more situationally aware. And we have a program for that. We have a great guy, retired Colonel Brian Searcy. He's got an amazing program where a family can learn in 4 minutes a day how to be more situationally aware to protect their family. Because here's a quick example. We just went through a lot of holidays. We're into a new year. But how many people go to a big box store, right? Or a big box hardware store. And okay, well, just go ahead and go look in the toys. Mommy or auntie will be there in a minute, whatever. Well, it was probably 6-8 months ago, maybe. There's a story about 11 children that had been rescued in a container. Okay. They were already going to be shipped out. And all of those kids were under the age of 12. And they were taken from 3 big box stores. Okay,
wow.
So a few of them were taken from one, a few were taken from another, a few were taken from a different one. Where were the adults watching? Yeah. Where were they looking? Just because a kid is 10 or 11 years old, they're not the adult that you are. Mm-hmm. And so the back doors of a big box store, think about all of the ways, all the exits, all the bathrooms, all the places that a child can get distracted by, get lost in, or get taken from, especially if they don't see an adult. So if you're a mom with, a baby in one arm, a baby in the basket, and another child, bring somebody with you to be the guardian. I mean, just to say, hey, can you just come with me and just make sure the kids are safe while I get all the groceries, and then we'll da-da-da-da-da, right? That's not so hard.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah. And it's so painful to think of that the people are, they could just be anywhere. And I mean, you see why it's so hard to talk about. It's painful to even acknowledge that it exists. And I know, when the police officer came to talk with us, I think that was a big eye opener for me. When I was in Florida as a massage therapist and the police came to talk to our, the statewide group. And he was just talking about, as you said, Andi, the difference between drug trafficking and human trafficking is that the drug, once it's used, you got to produce another one. A human being can be used multiple times a day and multiple times the next day. And you got one asset there that you can use over and over and over again and continue to make money. And
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
5 times a day.
Oh, holy cow. Yeah.
And a 10-year-old. 25 times a day.
No, I can't.
My stomach goes like this when I hear that.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but sometimes we have to, we have to.
You're right. Because that really embedded in my brain when he said that and it is, it's hard to think about. It's hard to imagine, but all the more reason, if you take that difficulty and that shock, and I can feel it in myself right now, you take that and you dig a little deeper underneath it and you pull that conviction out and stand up and say, as my little nephew would say, hell to the no. This, like, we're not going to let this happen to our children. We're not going to let this happen. And I didn't even think of Giselle Pellicotte. Are you familiar with her? She's from the woman from France. She, as an adult, her husband drugged her. And as she was passed out, sold her, and he did it repeatedly, and then gaslit her when she said, I think something's wrong with me, gaslit her into thinking that, it was all in her head. And her famous quote, which I love, is shame needs to switch sides. When she found out what was happening to her, her husband actually had videotaped and recorded all of this on his computer. 100 men were convicted from what he did to her. that had participated and over the time that she was being trafficked.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is familial trafficking, and he would drug her. She would be passed out. She never knew what was going on until she found out and took it to court, said shame needs to switch sides, and they're all going down. And
that's great. That's a great line. And you asked how people can coordinate, you know, with us and other organizations like us. Well, first go to the website, right? Okay.
Yes.
Take a look at the information there. Contact us through the contact, you know, and get that prevention packet. That's so key if you're kind of a newbie to this whole thing. And like you were saying, Deborah, it's like things happen and we wonder why. When a survivor, which is usually maybe 1 out of every 100 victims will survive, which is still a very small number, and they try to re-enter society and, oh, you were on drugs, you were this. Well, why don't you find out why that poor person was a drug addict or an alcoholic and how much pain they're trying to erase or trying to medicate, because we don't listen. We're so quick to judge. And so what you were talking about is being a voice of courage. It means speaking up, standing up to the best of your ability. If you have $5 a month, then great. We can use that to help a victim. Everything we do goes back to the victims. We don't keep the money from the books, the magazines, whatever. And partners like Teresa with her publishing company and our folks that she mentioned that are on the panels, we're all volunteers. No one gets paid. We're a 501c3. There are no staff payments. Everything is done so that the next victim, the next starfish, can be thrown back into the ocean of healing and hope.
Beautiful. Back into the ocean of healing and hope. So I know that you have something on your website where organizations that want to partner with you, that want to contribute something, can also join your efforts.
Absolutely. It's so easy to be a member. We don't have any meetings per se, but if you want to put your name on our roster, say, hey, I want to join. I want my voice. You can do that for as little as $50 for a lifetime membership. I mean, that's really not much. And there are different levels, different things you can get. So if you go to the tab that says join us, you can look at all those things, but really you can say, hey, I don't have a lot of time or a lot of money, but what I can do is get a lot of people to like your social media. Great. That's a great thing to help us with. We need likes. We need follows. We need our social media posts to be shared. We need people on January 22nd to buy an ebook for 99 cents. You can tell your friends about it. We have materials and promo things. In July, our DJs Against Trafficking, which has doubled in its expansiveness, is going to make world awareness a priority. And our first time around, I think, Teresa, it was like 15 different countries plus the U.S. that listened to that whole 15 hours. And there were more DJs that couldn't get on that one. They're like, hey, we don't want anything. We just want to be part of the next one. And so that's why we have to do 2 days, so we can give everyone a chance to be part of the movement, because that's what we've done. We started on Capitol Hill in 2019, and we're not stopping until we can't.
That is awesome. And that is beautiful. And I just, as you're speaking, I think there are more people who are in the hell to the no, in the hell to the no camp than there are of the predators. It's just the way that they operate that conceals it. And so bringing this awareness, bringing so much to light, bringing all of the hell to the no people who are ready to stand up and say, you will not touch God's children, and we're all God's children, no matter what our age is. As my teacher used to say, we're all children in the eyes of God, no matter what age we are. We're here to be advocates and shepherds for each other, and to care for each other, and to stand up for each other. So the more that we can bring the people of conviction and the people of hope and the people of faith together to say no, and to raise the awareness, and to just take the blinders off, really. And the denial, come out of the denial, take the blinders off. Then, so I just concede. I will say to everybody listening, get the information that Teresa shared that's on Andi's website. Get that from Andi's website, voicesagainsttrafficking.com. Go and get those resources. see what you can put in place to like take your blinders off, raise your awareness. I feel like I still have some, I'm sure I do have a lot of blinders on. So I want to go and get that information, take my blinders off, shed the blinders, raise the awareness, heighten my sensitivity to what is going on, and just become more courageous. Courageous is contagious, with a willingness to stand up and to be an advocate and to join you in what you're doing and in spreading the word. So do that for yourself, do that for your family, do that for the people that you may be able to impact through your life. There's nothing more rewarding than having that an impact for good in someone's life. And then share it with as many people as you can. Share it, because the more that those of us on the hell to the no side can share with each other and stand up together, then that's when we can stop those that operate in the silence and in the darkness and in the shadows that are doing the unthinkable things for those that we love.
Yeah. Absolutely. And please, we want to hear from you. We want to know if you're a company that maybe hasn't done much philanthropy. You know, we can partner with you. Maybe you're a business that would like training. We can offer that. We put these panels together, as Teresa knows, we bring everybody together, people from media, people from publishing, people from, you know, the U.S. government, people from other countries. You know, in our book, we have 2 or 3 international chapters. So you definitely want to get the information, because it won't bite you. It will only help you. And won't you be glad when you know you're part of the solution, whether you buy a book, a CD, a magazine, or you say, hey, you know what? I can do this monthly. I can do this one time. I will be a voice of courage in my own neighborhood, and I'm going to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's time for people to take their head out of the sand and really come to the light of what's actually happening in the darkness.
Mm-hmm. Yes, beautiful. I want to thank you both for what you're doing. And I have gone to your website and joined your organization, and I hope to have further involvement as things go on, as you have the events that I'm going to be watching for, events that I can get involved with, at the very least sharing with my community and the people that I know, to help them to take the blinders off, take their head out of the sand, and yeah, just learn the tools. Learn how to listen, learn how to speak. So thank you both very much for what you're doing. May your actions be blessed and multiplied many, many times. Thank you so much.
It's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. I'm just grateful to be able to be a part of something that is not just making a difference for each of the 3 of us and the listeners here, but making a difference for the victims.
Yes, and for the world. Yeah, just to, in general, take the blinders off. And that's part of what I'm committed to doing with, I'm making a change. This is the beginning of a change I'm making to my podcast. And, with this change that I'm making is I'll have a number of guests that are going to be helping us to take blinders off and to recognize how our culture and just the way that, for perhaps centuries, at least a century, things have been, we've been indoctrinated to a certain level of complacency and expectancy about what's okay and what isn't. And that's changing now. And the more that we can pull back the curtains, take our heads out of the sand, take the blinders off, we can recognize that all the things that are right in front of our eyes that perpetuate this culture, the unhealthy culture that we've lived in. And God willing, turn it around.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Everyone, thank you for being part of the solution, Debra, and putting this out there to your audiences. And I hope that they will magnify your efforts by sharing it with other people and by getting involved wherever they're at. So God bless each and every one of you. And if you're a victim, it is not your fault, and you are not alone.
Yes. Shame needs to switch sides. Thank you so much. At voicesagainsttrafficking.com.